Welcome to the podcast, The Dental Breakdown. My name is Christian White. I'm the CEO and owner of White & Associates Practice Consulting, Better Business, Better Dentistry. Today's podcast is dedicated to the success of the private dentist and navigating the troubled waters caused by the coronavirus. And to do that and to answer your questions and your concerns, we've brought in the top talent in the dental industry who are here today. These are people who have been working with private dentists for years and have helped them to become exceedingly profitable. So let's go ahead and meet them. Lisa, let's start with you, please.
Hello, my name is Lisa Netzer, and I'm an attorney with Minnesota Transitions. I've been working with Joe Fricton and his firm for the past 2 years, and I bring with me a deep history in employment law.
Wonderful. Dr. Frank, let's move to you, please.
Okay, Frank Milnar, dentist in St. Paul for 43 years. I am still a wet-fingered clinician. I'm an educator and a publisher, and I do go around the country mentoring dental students, recent graduates, corporate dentists, things like that, because I bring the passion of dentistry with me as my mentors gave it to me.
Wonderful. Joe Fricton, let's go to you, please.
Thanks, Christian. My name is Joe Fricton. I'm an attorney. I started Minnesota Transitions with Dr. Dave Lindy, and we help dentists through all phases of the transition process, from buying or selling a dental practice, joining a partnership or leaving a partnership, associate contracts, office leases, real estate, and then all the surrounding legal issues.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joe. Jay White, let's move to you, please.
Thank you, Christian. 40 years ago, I started White & Associates Practice Consulting, and we've been doing good things for dental offices for that long. We get involved with inter-staff issues. We get involved with lots of systems issues. Anything to do with running the business, we get involved with. So we've got some experiences here that I think will be helpful in our time together today.
All right. Thank you, Jay. All right. I think that all of you would agree with me that we are in unprecedented times in the dental marketplace. Most of us have not experienced something like this. Frank, I know you've been in the dental industry for a long time, but I think this is something that's new for everyone. So Lisa, I kind of want to start with you. PTO is something that most people do not know a lot about. Most dentists don't know it. It's in the employee handbook somewhere. But who should be getting PTO, and who should I be paying it to? I think that's been a really big question.
And how much should I get?
Yeah, and that's the other piece. Thanks, Jay.
So personal time off, or paid time off as it's sometimes referred to, PTO, old terms for it are vacation and sick leave. A lot of dental offices have varying amounts of paid time off or sick leave for their employees, and a lot of dental associate contracts also address that directly if an associate dentist has a separate written contract. So the question of when do I have to pay PTO is often answered by going to an employee handbook or to an employee contract and checking out what were the terms you agreed to. If you have an employment handbook that you issued 10 years ago and you've never updated, that handbook still applies probably. It depends on what the language is actually in the handbook, but handbooks written 10, 20 years ago tend to be stiffer and tend to form contracts with employees more so than ones that have been updated more recently. So it's really important that if you have any things that are lying around, especially we've run into dentists who have purchased offices that had an established handbook, and then they've kind of continued on what the original owner was doing. That's a continuation of the employee handbook. So if you haven't looked at that since you did your closing for your business, you really need to look at it now. The language in there about medical leave, any disability leave, is really important. There are required leave provisions in the law, but generally they apply to employers with 50 or more employees. That's the Family Medical Leave Act, and then including the new paid sick leave provisions and the amendments for the Family Medical Leave Act generally are going to apply to employers with 50 or more employees. So in other words, if you have less than 50 employees, you're pretty flexible. But if you haven't established what those rules are yet, then you might be needing to do so. And the main reason I would encourage people to really think about getting their thoughts down in uniform while maybe they're closed right now is because we're probably going to go through a period where your office can be open, but your employees will probably be facing sickness, or their kids will be sick, or their parents will be sick. So you don't want those people in your office if they're caring for people who are actively ill. And so what's the best way to make sure that happens? And then usually it's paid leave. But maybe your handbook doesn't provide any paid leave. Maybe your handbook says you will give amounts of unpaid leave. That's perfectly fine. But you just want to make sure you apply the rules across the board the same to all employees. So don't make an exception for your office manager that you wouldn't make for another dental assistant. Make sure that you're treating everyone the same. That's my best advice to you, especially when it comes to leave provisions. And also make sure that your handbook gives you some flexibility. And if you look through those handbooks and you find out that there are provisions in there you really don't remember, or you have never really used, or maybe it's just not the way you do business anymore, you need to get those handbooks updated. So I would be happy to work with people on handbooks. We do both, simply editing what they've already got, if they're pretty happy with what they have, or starting from scratch and everything in between.
Okay, so if I'm a dentist, Lisa, and I haven't looked at my handbook for 210 years, how do I get that to you? Is that something I email the whole document to you, or is that maybe I do a shared file, or how do you have a normal way you guys
Absolutely.
like that?
Yep. So usually what I do, my process is that I will look over any existing handbooks or policies that dentists might have. Then I usually meet with them over the phone, and we go through what they want, what they're looking for, and then we send out a draft for them to look at. And usually it's for some people, it's a lot of back and forth because they have a lot of very specific ideas of what they want. And other people, they just want kind of what everyone else is doing. So, I've worked with enough handbooks that I can tell you what the average is, or maybe, oh, this is a really good benefit. You might be able to attract employees in the future because you have these good benefits or that good benefit. In a world where dental assistants are, like hen's teeth, maybe you want an employee handbook that's going to attract and keep good talent.
Lisa, those are all great points. I think
Good,
keeping the talent in the dental office, with a good employee handbook is a really great thing. Just kind of another question. In employee handbooks, because of what we're going through right now in this pandemic, will that be something that will be in employee handbooks going forward if something like this were to ever come up again?
It's one thing you could think about, but keep in mind, employee handbooks are like employment contracts. And so when you get an employee handbook, you don't get an employee handbook for life. Just like if you sign an employment agreement, it doesn't guarantee you a job forever. So if the office has to close because of an emergency, whether it's a tornado hits your office, or fire, or other things, handbooks don't generally deal with that. And the reason is because if you're in that situation, most likely you're going to place those employees on at least temporary layoff. In those situations, unemployment benefits are completely appropriate for handling the situation.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. That was wonderful. Frank, I want to jump to you. Right now the dental practices are shut down. We're doing a little bit of dentistry on an emergency basis. With everything that's going on, how does that affect treatment plans for our patients?
Well, as I said in the previous podcast, you have to deconstruct previous paradigms. It's all going to be different now. And if you come back with the same game plan you had before the virus, I don't think that's going to work anymore. I think all of us will agree on that. Is when you do this, when you re-enter, the patients are going to be watching you. Sure, maybe it's convenient hours. I don't know. Do you take the insurance? I'm not sure, but they want healthy dentistry, and they're going to be looking at you. They're going to look at the staff. They're going to look at how cleanly your office is, everything. And for the treatment plans, I would say this is dentists are experts on clinical dentistry and patients are experts on themselves. And what you want to do now is find a common link to the clinical side with the personal side, and that's called compassionate, empathetic dentistry. we want to make sure that anybody who answers the phone first, the first line, is just not administrative. How can I help you? Do you have insurance? What is this? How did that sort of thing? We want somebody who's curious about the patient and empathetic to, because we as dentists and our staff with the patients have shared experiences of vulnerability. We've all been vulnerable through this, and we have to share that link before we get going into the clinical side. Kristen, you've said to me many times when you talk to me, you said, Frank, do you have a paper and pencil? Write this down. This is the time I'm going to give it back to you. I want you to write this down. Curiosity is more important than the handpiece, okay? And patients want answers to their curiosity first. They want to know that you care, that you're empathetic. We have a shared experience. And I'll tell you this, I've done more unselfishly by calling patients because I can't see them. I've got to know them better, and they certainly saw a different side of me because of the virus. It's not a clinical thing. We start out with what we shared together. We're all vulnerable, and we'll all be vulnerable going forward again. It'll never go back to the way it used to be. So remember this, that the patient's factoids or isosceles triangle is in the inverse of a dentist. We as dentists want to do the clinical piece, the clinical finding. Oh, the x-rays show this. Oh, I see you have a catch or an open margin on this. You have a crack line on this. What they're starting with, gee, my husband just got laid off. I was been on unemployment. I have insurance benefits, but I really can't afford the co-pays. This will go into the next podcast about transitional restorations, things like this. The dentists have a very unique opportunity to link the personal side with the patients to the clinical side and not starting out with the clinical dentistry piece. I don't think that's going to be the right way to do it. You never talk a patient into a treatment plan that's better for the dentist than the patient. Doing nothing is a great clinical option right now to bridge what we're seeing and where we're going. That's called trust and confidence and expertise. I had a patient that called me and wants to go on some comprehensive treatment with a implant. And he says, how do I want to get going? What do I do? And so I backed him up, and we'd spend a half hour on the phone just talking about the treatment plan, a very personal conversation. It wasn't in an operatory. And I said, this is what you have to do. Orthodontics, things like this, bleaching. And I sent him to an oral surgeon to place the implant. And he says, Dr. Milnar, I have something to tell you. I said, what is that? He said, when I went to the oral surgeon, the staff and the surgeon were really complimentary on your clinical reputation as being a person of integrity and an educator. Now, I didn't expect that, but that was a huge deposit in my account for being a compassionate dentist. I make more money by doing less dentistry today, and you're going to make more money in the long run by being a compassionate, curious dentist about the personal life of the patients. Never try to talk a patient into treatment even though you need cash flow. You're dancing with the devil. Be very cautious about that. Long term, we're going to be okay. You give them options. What are the benefits? How does this improve your life? They're all coming to you, knocking on your door because they have a problem. What you have to figure out is, how can you make the problem go away and being compassionate and empathetic? Now, my final comment will be to the younger dentists that are eager, the associates that want to get going and do clinical dentistry, is First of all, when you see the patient, you say, this is what I see. Do you see their problem? Do you see why they came in? You better see their problem and talk about their problem, not what you see in your clinical findings. Number two, this is what it means to me, and this is what it means to you. Three, here are the implications of these conditions as it relates to your daily lives. As far as pain, taking time off work, your family, things like that. And number four, how do these conditions rate to the quality of your life, your health, and the issues you came in here for? And I did say underscore health, Christian. Got to use this word, not your oral health, your overall physical health. So I think we can all agree here, Joe and Lisa and Jason, this is a new dawn of an era, and we better be concerned about health, not just their dental health. Otherwise, I think the patients, if you give them treatment plans that they don't understand, that they didn't expect, that are non-compassionate, non-empathetic, I think they're going to move on. I think you're going to lose patients in your practice. So change can be our biggest opportunity or our biggest threat. I think I look on this, and Jay would say this, I'm looking at it as a huge opportunity, even at 43 years, to be compassionate and address the problems that they came in to see me for and not sell them a treatment plan. That's my belief.
Nice. Thank you very much for that, Frank. That was awesome. Very well said. Frank, one more really quick question for you. Just a complete right turn. If you can, for a minute, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. Tell us a little bit about teledentistry. And you're talking about health and how this, we need to be focused on health, the patient's focused on it, and this being empathetic. How does that play into all this?
Well, teledentistry is going to be a buzzword going forward. As a key opinion leader now, we've gone through many phases. I'm in the lunchrooms. I interface with a lot of people, and I'm also on key opinion leader groups that really can kind of steer the future of dentistry and see trend lines. We saw it with bleaching. We saw it with Invisalign. We saw it with veneers. We see it with implants. We see it with CEREX. We see it with everything. But teledentistry to me is you better understand what it is and what it's not and what it costs. Teledentistry is a little different than telemedicine. I can understand why they use it, but if we incorporate the software package for teledentistry like we're talking right now, it could be an expense that you don't get a return on because the staff, unless they really understand it, it's probably going to become redundant in a couple months.
I think you're right.
I think you can do teledentistry you can't do it on an iPhone because it's not HIPAA compliant. But you can do teledentistry with a conventional telephone with a dentist and a staff and get the same virtues and the same value system. Like I just told you that I'm just doing a lot of professional networking and communications with my patients to verify that they have all the trust and confidence in me. I think I'd be cautious on it because we as dentists will grab technology. We're really keen on technologies to purchase it, not understanding how it's going to work in a year or two, Jay. And we could be subscribed to maybe a $500 a month package, and maybe after a month or two, or what Joe and Lisa say, maybe it's going to be longer. It's going to be passé.
Right.
I think it's good that we talk about it. I think it's good right now that we understand it, but I think the best way to do it is what you, Christian, you and Jay have been doing for decades, and that's do it the personal way and that's for private practice, is to have a link to the clinical and the personal side of dentistry. It's continuity of care. And take this time with your treatment plans for the dentist and not an administrative staff about what insurance do you take. We have an opening tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Bringing your insurance card in with you is for your empathetic staff member to understand the shared experience and to communicate trust and confidence and expertise of the practice. That would be my teledentistry, and it's working right now as we sit home doing this.
Okay, thanks a lot, Frank. I appreciate that. Those are insightful comments. All right, let's move over here to Joe Fricton. Joe, I am getting ready to, or I'm in the middle of thinking about buying a dental practice. Maybe I've just started getting into the transition process. From your standpoint right now of how you see things, how is that going? How is the coronavirus affecting people buying practices? Is that something that you're fielding a lot of calls on? Just why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, in general, the only major impact for people who are buying dental practices are people set to close on the sale within the next month or so. With dental offices closed, people are reluctant to close on the sale when it's unknown when they're going to be open.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, there isn't much of an impact right now. We're going to see what happens down the road and how quickly things recover. It's our expectation that as long as there is as everything opens back up, there's going to be a large demand for dentists. Dental problems don't go away.
True.
And so what we'll probably be doing is looking at the revenue of the offices, post-closing for, the 6 months, maybe the third quarter and the fourth quarter, to see how the financials look for dental offices. But in general, for people who are looking to buy a dental practice, this is kind of a good time to kind of take stock of your current position to see where you want to be. Think about your future in terms of the location that you want to live in, what type of practice you want to be in, a group practice with multiple doctors, a solo, and that can help guide you kind of putting together a plan for where you want to be after everything opens up and everything calms down a bit.
All right, thanks, Joe. Appreciate that. Okay, let's go over to Jay. Jay, you and I both know there's going to be some major changes in the dental office because of everything that's going on. This attitude of health. There's some systems that are going to need to be, kind of tweaked a little bit. But I think one of the systems that's going to be really important is how do we address the new patients when they come into the office? How does that whole process going to change because of the coronavirus? Why don't you share some thoughts on that?
Thanks, Christian. I want to tell Frank as many high fives as I can because he's said some really important things that are going to make a dental office successful. Been successful in his dental office for the last long time, just doing what he's said. He said some really good words. Curiosity, the personal part of dentistry versus the clinical part of dentistry, and compassion. How do you demonstrate compassion? My experience is that you listen, you ask good questions, and you hang around for their answers, and you listen to them. You don't look at your watch while you're doing this. And I'm going to add one more phrase here that I think Frank knows of, and everybody else kind of knows too, but it's important here at this point in time. Perception is reality, and everyone's got their own perception. As Frank said, they are experts on themselves, and don't you dare question that, or you'll be in trouble. So how do you get these people back in the office that are returning patients? And secondly, how do you welcome a new patient in who's now coming in with all this history that we've had the last week, 2 weeks?
Correct.
Someone is going to have to make some calls to some people to fill a schedule, okay? And there's going to have to be discussion of safety, health, as Frank has said, emphasis on health. And when we get the patient in the office, we're going to have to give them a perception that is our reality, which is doing some things that we can't have always done in the past, but we haven't really been doing it publicly. For example, unwrapping sterile instruments in front of them, wiping off the doorknobs, as Frank does, to make sure that the patient knows they're sterile or clean. Wipe down the chairs, use face masks and gloves. All those things we've been doing for the last a long time, but we haven't really shown them that. And right now, it's important that they see it because that's what they're going to perceive. This takes time. This takes time. So this is a time to be relaxed and not focus on a highly, seeing 210 patients a day. There's going to be a big difference between our private offices and our corporate offices. And our private offices have got lots of resources to make this work. Corporate offices do not. They don't know anything about what Frank's talking about. All it is next, 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 and the patients are not going to like it. Okay? So, how do you set up a situation where we listen to them seriously, not just to get on to the next patient? Do we have the dentist do that? Do we have a staff member do that? Do we have a hygienist do that? This comes down to another question, which is how do we do new patients coming into the practice? Historically, it's been efficient, very efficient, to have the hygienist see the new patient first for an hour. And maybe she's good, and maybe she's not good at welcoming someone into the office. But I suggest that maybe in today's atmosphere, perception is more important. And that is, we have the new patient come in to a wonderfully warm, talented person who may be on the staff, have them spend 10 or 15 minutes with them before we get into the hygienist's chair or before we get into the doctor's chair. And that person listens, asks good questions. Are you afraid? What's important to you in health? How would you rate your health? Is there something that's important for me to pay attention to? Let me make sure that the doctor understands this and listens to you. There is a person who is actually historically been designated to do this in dental office, and they're called a client coordinator, whose job it is to see the new patients and in some cases actually do proposals to patients for treatment plans. But I think it's effective that somebody besides the dentist sees these people first, and the dentist and the new patient and this client coordinator can be met in ahead of time, and the doctor can be briefed as to what the patient says is important to them. Listening is something that we have very little time for in dental offices. Now is the time to really do it and well, and I think every staff member has got to do that as well, not just the dentist. I don't know what else to say, but that Frank's got some good words there.
Well, I just want to throw it back at you, Jay, is that 9/11 changed our country. 3/16 changed dentistry.
Yeah.
And it's not going back. And
Right.
don't even try to do it.
Yeah.
And I'll quote a esteemed colleague of mine, Christian White, who once said yesterday that dentistry is a personal health service.
Yeah.
It takes a priority over technology.
Amen.
And this is what we're concerned about, is the overall health, not the oral health, the overall health of the patient. Seize the moment, Jay. This is what it's going to be.
Yeah. The personal part of this has got to be emphasized, not necessarily the clinical part. The clinical there's time for that, as you've said, but the personal part has got to come first. And actually, the most successful dentists that I've seen, they naturally have done this for a long time, like you, because you develop trust. That's how you develop trust, and that's what a private dentist is all about. Patients have a relationship that's built on trust, and a relationship that's long-term relationship. And in offices like that, the staff are long-term staff. They're not short-termers. So it's
Jason, I've had as you know, in the office that I practice, we've had staff members there over 30 years.
That's
And
incredible.
they come from great distances because I think they feel there's a feeling of trust, predictability, expertise. I can't speak for them. They stay, and if they go, they want to come back. And
Well, there's a familial feeling about that that's important, and it's comfortable. And it's nice to go where people know who you are and you've been there for a long time, and you know their shoe size and hat size.
It's nice to go where everybody knows your name.
Oh,
What we're
man.
trying to get at.
There you go.
Yeah,
well
amen.
said. Well said.
There you
It's,
go.
that's how that goes. Yeah, so the feeling of trust is extremely important. Joe, I think you can probably say something about trust in working with your own clients. I know you've got clients who you've been working with over a longer period. And I think that's going to be one of the themes going forward. There's a health piece, there's a trust piece, and there's somebody is going to listen to me and understand me, and it's not going to be a Formula One race where I come in and someone spends 2 seconds with me and all of a sudden it helps.
Like there is
Christian,
in corporate dental offices.
Right.
I'm fortunate enough that 3 of my patients have become dentists. And I'm
Right.
fortunate enough to be a clinical mentor for the MIAC colleges in St. Paul area where they have to shadow. And 3 people who've come into my office to shadow are now in dental schools.
Wow.
Happy days.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's great.
All right. This was a wonderful conversation. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. I'm going to say, does anybody else have anything else they'd like to add? Any comments? All right, that's great. I thought everybody had a lot of really, really great things to say. Everything can be summed up in one word: impactful today. It's always nice to have all of you guys on a call like this. I think when we get together, there's some really nice synergy between all of us when we do this. And I think in the end, the private dentist is the winner, to be really honest. So thank you again for everybody for attending. To all of our listeners, if what we're talking about is of interest to you, which it should be, please go to whitedentalconsulting.com/breakdown, and or you can call us at 952-432-3322. And if you have questions for anybody on the panel, I will personally make sure that you are routed to them. Thanks a lot, everybody, for attending. Appreciate it. Have a wonderful weekend.